How's it going? I am really excited to be here and honored to be speaking with all of you. I think that a lot of what I'm going to talk about are things that many people in this room probably have a lot of knowledge about already. But I think it's worth talking about because it's worth, I think, rallying together as a community, especially of creators, so that we can kind of take these things going forward. So I'm going to talk about communities and creating transformative communities and what we can do together. So first I'm going to talk about what is a community, and then I'm going to address some of the problems and potential solutions for how we can kind of come together more. So there are a couple definitions of community that I wanted to address. One is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. Now for all of us, that's by and large LARP, right? So we're part of the LARP community because we all LARP. And that's the thing that we have in common. But I think that there's something deeper than that that warrants a little bit more kind of questioning. And that is the second definition, which is a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. And I think that there's something here that speaks to something deeper, and that's about value. We all have a set of, by and large, common values. There are things that we want to share with each other and share with others in order to kind of bring our philosophies of life and our experiences into the world. And I think that's pretty powerful. That also comes with a set of challenges, right? So there are some problems that I want to bring up that I think that lots of community leaders face. So there are culture problems, right? So one of the major problems in LARP culture is access, right? So now this can be something about that there's a game that favors an incumbent group of players, right? There's also games that favor socioeconomic groups by whether it's they reward donations or they have such a high price cap that it's very difficult for people to get into the game if they don't have a lot of means. There's also an acceptance problem. Often newcomers can feel displaced, rejected, confused. And I think that there's a problem with acceptance also surrounding language and how we use language. Now, a lot of us have a lot of common language that we've developed both in our community and through, I think, the tools of social justice. I think that's something that's very important to a lot of us. But I think that also when we can also fall too far into using those tools to exclude people as well. And I think that it's important that we recognize that exclusion can happen from both sides. There's also content. So there's always problems with content in LARP, and I think that some of the ones that I think are common are that, one, there's a lack of clear definitions about what's to be expected or involved. And that's something that a lot of people have a lot of issue with. Like if they sign up for a game where they're told this is going to be a place where you're not going to experience discrimination, yet the rules of the game then include a class of people who are to be discriminated against, then that is a problem, right? Like you're sending mixed messages. I think there's also an issue of trying to please everybody and pleasing nobody as a result. And again, this gets back to being clear about the intention of what you created and who it's for. And then I think that there's also a problem that I've seen come up over and over, and this is something that I, as a creator, am absolutely guilty of, coming from a place of privilege, but well-meaning people appropriating someone else's pain in order to tell a story. And I think that there are times and places for allegory and to address those topics, but I also think that it's important to recognize when that's not your story to tell. All right, so then I think there are also some common problems in a lot of LARP systems, and I'm going to be speaking specifically about a fair number of buffer systems that I've experienced. And this is obviously not nearly as much the case in like freeform and other styles of LARP that have started to emerge in the last decade or so. But they are problems in a lot of LARP systems that are incumbent to a huge population of game designers. So I think that some of the times we see a lot of systems that have been adapted from tabletop RPGs, and they can have problems in them, like that they have these very gamist mechanics that can encourage harmful player behavior. So hoarding information or items, cheating, unwanted PvP or CVC, if you will. And there are lots of times where games have healthy CVC, but I think that you reach a point of difficulty when you've enabled a system that allows people to have CDC conflict that is unwanted. There are also systems that reinforce some what I consider to be problematic stereotypes surrounding the concept of racial affinities. I think that it's high time that we got rid of that. I don't think we need that anymore. I think that there are lots of systems that require a lot of heavy GM attention and can remove the ability for collaborative play at scale. Because if you need an answer for every question that you have from a GM, then that's going to be taking that person's time. It's going to be making it so that you're not interacting with other players in the game. And I think that there's a lot of systems that I see in a lot of, especially simulation-heavy LARPs, that require tons and tons of GM time and attention and take away the ability for people to have this thing that we all are enjoying, which is interacting with one another. So my kind of thesis here is that many game systems do not actually fit the medium. So the design actually doesn't fit the purposes. So I think that LARP is good at some things, like emotional connection, personal narrative. And I think that LARP is bad at some things, like stat tracking on the fly. So I think that we need to be smarter about how we design in order to get rid of those problems. So I have some solutions. So design smarter. So just, yeah, goodbye. Okay, so first I want to address some problems with design, right? So I hold the tenet that personal beliefs and culture of origin shouldn't impact your stats or your ability to learn things. I don't think that anyone should be precluded from learning something new. I think that when you set up a system under which only people of a certain race or culture or specific identity can learn a thing, then you are creating a bad situation. So race, class, gender, and orientation shouldn't impact your stats or abilities. Like, oh my gosh, people are people? Okay, I guess we could have that reflected in games as well. You should be allowed to portray someone from whatever socioeconomic status is interesting to you. I think that access, this gets back to access, and I think that this is something that's problematic. I think that when you say that you can only play a rich person if you can supply the costuming to do this, and you can pay extra amounts to have like upkeep and things like that, you're reinforcing an already huge problem in our society of classism. No weapon skills, anyone can try to use anything. Like why, I can pick up anything I find on the ground and try to use it as a weapon. Why are we only allowing people to use certain types of weapons? That's just a personal belief personally. And then I think that there's also an issue with special items. I think that special items really, really hurt equality and collaboration. And I think that I would encourage LARP designers to consider removing them from their games or have them have those items be something that requires something from somebody as opposed to bestow something to somebody. Because again, you're creating inequality. It's not good. Okay, so here's design examples of that. So when you create a game system and a methodology, I think it's really important to have certain tenets. And these are some tenets that I wanted to show, and then some examples of systems or ideas that you can use to reinforce those tenets, those designs, the choices that you're making. So example number one, the tenet here is the journey is more important than the destination. So a supporting system example is reward momentous happenings and recognize their impact. So something like, instead of having a multi-death system, which is just a mechanical flavor that doesn't actually progress a character along anything except like leading to their death, consider instead there's a narrative progression system that can reinforce really powerful life changes. Maybe you have 5, slots of like momentous thing happening to your character, and maybe one of those is falling in love, and maybe another one of those is losing a parent, and maybe another one of those is, falling in love again, and maybe, there's lots of different things that can progress a character that can be waypoints for that character arc. It doesn't need to be death. We don't need to always be moving towards death as something that progresses you. Okay, design example number 2. The tenet here is it's more fun to play to lose. Now, not everybody shares that belief. It's a belief that I have, and I think that as a game creator, it's incumbent on me to create systems that show that. So supporting systems, so consider a system that forces players to put their stats on the line when they need to win a conflict. So that as opposed to it being rewarding somebody for winning a conflict, you're basically punishing them for getting into that conflict and having it unresolvable between those people. And so when you're putting something on the line, you're much more likely to play to lose. Okay, so design example number 3. People are equal but unique. So I see a lot of systems in which if people with pointy ears have better stats in one area and people with green skin have better stats in another area. I think that's tired, and I think it's time for us to get rid of it. But I do think that people deserve to feel special, and I think that rather than making class or racial characteristics, I think that it's better to give individual characteristics to an individual player based on the things that they've told you about their character and what's important to them and what values they hold and their backstory. And I think that it's not that difficult to come up with a teeny little thing for each person. And I think that as a game creator, it's important that you collaborate with your player and make those things happen. I think that is a lot more fun for everybody involved. So for this character, for example, may have some ability to comfort somebody in a time of trauma that someone else doesn't have, right? And that may be unique to her, and someone else may have something similar but not exactly the same, because no two people are exactly the same, and what we bring to the table is all unique, and I think that if you want that to be something that's important to your game, reflect it in your systems. Design example number 4. So I am a big believer that you cannot play LARPs alone. I mean, I guess you could. I think it's a lot more fun to do things with people and to learn from others. So the tenet here is that constructivist pedagogy is healthy and positive. I think that's something that we need to start reinforcing with system design here. So the supporting system example is, so consider restricting players from growing beyond a certain point of knowledge or skill until they bring in others, teach, and collaborate. So maybe you have a group of ritual magic users and someone has reached level 3 of ritual magic, but there are 5 possible levels. Well, they can't get to level 4 until they bring in 3 acolytes and train them up in everything that they know, and they're all able to practice together. So now I'm going to talk about some actions that I think game creators can take. 1, get your staff trained in conflict resolution, communications training. I think that this is something that is becoming more and more accessible. There are lots and lots of different psychological offices that offer trainings, and I think that's something that is, as game creators and as community leaders, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're doing those things. Be the champion of your community. Welcome every single player. Create an environment where people can introduce themselves ahead of game. Don't force people into doing those interactions. I think that that's also can be just as difficult for people. But I think that making it welcoming for people to do so is easy to do. Be available after. So learn to run post-game debriefs. Actually respond to the feedback that you get after game. When somebody tells you that they had a great time, it's just as important for you to tell them that you enjoyed your time with them as well. And when somebody has a bad time, it's just as important that you recognize and acknowledge their feelings. They're being vulnerable with you and sharing something with you. Acknowledging it should be on your roadmap. Overhaul your reward system. Like, can we please stop giving out EAPs for money? Can we really? Like, I think there are other things that we can do here. So maybe instead of offering character points for donations, offer to co-write a plot with that person. Say, hey, thank you so much for contributing to the health of this game. Would you be interested in picking one of your friends that we can co-write a plot for? You know this person better than I do, and you know what they like and want in this game, and we can co-write a plot for them and run it together as a fun surprise for them. Like, there's other things that you can do that can reward players committing to your game besides just giving them stuff. So create a scholarship program. Let other players sponsor players who want to come to your game. I know that like everyone comes from different means, and that a lot of people who are of means in our community desperately want to give the opportunity for other people to be able to play and do what they're doing. Set that up, get it going. Create a bank of newbie gear. So weapons, tents, costumes, sleeping pads, things like that. There's quite a few people who like cycle out of old gear, and they have that gear just sitting in their basements or their storage units or whatever. Create a bank of it. Have a list so that new community members who want to come and try things out, but they don't have the gear to do it, can borrow some. Or you can give it to them. And then there's some resources that you can use. So I don't know if you guys are familiar, or folks, pardon me, or are familiar with the mixing desk of Larp. But the mixing desk of Larp is a way that I think helps you as a creator frame what your intention is with your game. If you go through this mixing desk of Larp, it's on the Nordic Larp wiki. You can probably click on it after these slides. Then I think that that'll help you to frame what your intention is and be clear to players when you're in your game blurbs and saying, hey, this is a Secrets and Powers game, this is a game that has, challenging themes where we're going to be discussing topics of inequality, this is, really figure out what your intention is and put it out there so that people aren't surprised or getting mixed messages. Safe space policies, use them, enforce them. They're great. There are so many all over the internet that you can just steal straight up and then change a little bit depending on your needs. But geek feminism started this like years ago, and I think that there's tons more that I think it's an absolute necessity for LARP communities at this point. Steal from every emotional safety system out there. There are so many. I think there's an entire panel on different emotional safety systems. So steal those things. Make sure that you have space for people to be able to tell you when it's too much for them. The last piece of advice I have here is read nonviolent communication. I don't know if anybody is familiar. I see some shakes, so yeah. Nonviolent communication is a communication technique. It's called the language of life. I think it's really helpful for practicing emotional, empathetic listening and response and conflict resolution. And I highly recommend it. The audiobook's like 5 hours. It's like 5 hours of your life. And it'll change the way you see things. It's really worth doing. And that is all I have.